Hi everyone, it's Anne Sinclair from Digestive Detective. Today I am talking about histamine foods. Now, one of my children got diagnosed with high histamine last year, and it's a lot to take on. I actually cried, and I actually know about this stuff. So people dealing with it who don't know about this stuff, you need to take a deep breath. You need to know that it doesn't have to be perfect. You need to know that there is no perfect solution. You just have to do the best you can. So some of the important things to remember to start with are histamine foods need to be kept cool. And so, for example, and as fresh as you can buy it. So, for example, the more the food decays, the more histamines are going to be in it. So, for example, if somebody caught a fish yesterday or the day before, and then it's not cooked, and then it's traveled to the fish shop, and then you don't buy it till the day after, that's going to be really high in histamines because it's starting to decay as it is. So a good option there is snap, frozen, wild, caught fish. Great solution. You can buy them in most supermarkets, and they're generally really good quality fish. So that's a good thing to start with. It stops the histamines from forming. Leftovers are a really big thing, because for most of us who teach people about nutrition, make extra. Take some for lunch. But with people who are high histamine, you can't actually do that. So you can either cook the food and then freeze it if it's suitable for freezing, and then they can defrost it and eat it, or cook it fresh. That's probably the best things that you can do. Foods like bone broth, kombucha, sauerkraut, and kefir, all those fermented foods should be avoided. As the longer they cook them, the higher the histamines are going to be. I see lots of people telling people that they can cure their histamine by having those fermented foods. Not true. You can still have bone broth. You can actually have meat broth. So take the bones out, cook it for 2 to 4 hours, then you've still got a broth. And it's completely different to the broth that you would have from a bone broth that you've cooked for 48 hours. So histamines and fermented foods, totally out. High histamine foods generally are like alcohol, aged cheeses like Parmesan and Camembert, deli meats, and other fermented foods that or not so much fermented foods that we've talked about, but other foods that can trigger tomatoes, eggplant, spinach, soy and spices, fish and sardines for some people, citrus and fruits. Bread intolerance comes up for some people as they think that it might be due to the yeast and how it impacts on the gut bacteria. There are also foods, just to complicate it even further, that are called histamine liberators. So some people have a hypersensitivity to certain food triggers that release the histamine into their bloodstream. So they're foods. So the most difficult for me thing when it started was we were trying to put a lunchbox together, and everything that we had in the lunchbox was histamine-containing food. So there's a couple of things you can do. I followed one diet. I spoke to a lady on Instagram who is a low histamine person, and she's been histamine free for a couple of years but had quite bad histamines, and she said to me, pick one diet because they're all different and stick with it, and that really helped us. So we used the SIGHI diet, the SIGI diet I like to call it, or a simplified histamine elimination diet. There are lots of problems around the recommended diets because they don't correspond as lists. The trick is you can't try and eliminate all histamine foods. It's impossible. They're everywhere. So you'll do your head in if you're trying to do that. So manage the load of the histamine foods that you're trying to eat. So don't have spinach and tomatoes and fish for breakfast, things like that. Just work your way into, you can have a little bit if you don't have reaction. Don't have any more that day, or spread it out for longer. Work on your gut health while you're doing this, because that's really important. And this is a game changer for some people. Make sure you're getting food that's fresh enough and refrigerated as soon as you can. So I know people who have histamine problems. They take a cooler bag with ice to the shops, put the food in there, bring it straight home, put it into the fridge. And that is helpful for them. What else do I need to say about that? Once again, do the best you can. It's not a precise science. You know, the other thing I find is when a person goes without so what I could possibly go without, somebody else can eat. So trying to do it from somebody else's, so there's a bit of trial and error as you go. I couldn't get my head around that then. You just need to make sure you're having the cofactors and nutrients that you need for the DAO production, because that's really important. And if you don't know what DAO production is, go back and look at yesterday's video. You'll see in there what it is. So vitamin C, B6, zinc and copper. Vitamin A is really useful because it can help support your immune function, helps maintain your mucous membranes, and helps you repair your gut barrier. So be careful using vitamin A if you're thinking about getting pregnant. The other supplement that I think is really good and helpful is quercetin. It can help stabilize the mast cells. It inhibits the histamine from releasing into the bloodstream. It also relaxes the smooth muscles and suppresses the eosinophils, and the eosinophils are the ones that can run around and make histamine worse. So herbs that are useful are ginger. It inhibits histamine release. So, use it in your cooking and everyday life. Marshmallow, the herb marshmallow, not the little white and pink ones you get from the shops, not them. Marshmallow does the same as ginger, so it helps inhibit the histamine release going into your body. St. Mary's thistle is a great one. And it prevents the mast cells from releasing histamine, and so it's really useful for allergies. Holy basil, which I love as a herb, it's an adaptogen herb. It helps us balance our stress levels. High stress can help force the release of histamine. So I recommend this often as a tea. It's perfect when you're feeling overstressed and overwhelmed. And it's surprising, it is only a tea, but it can really drop that stress response down fast. Nigella sativa is... or has been shown to be effective at alleviating allergy symptoms in allergic rhinitis, eczema, and bronchial asthma. It lowers mast cell levels of histamines. It can also help with gas, and you can buy it as a condiment and a spice to put in your cooking. So I recommend that people do that if they can. If you're working with liquid extracts or tinctures, work with a qualified practitioner rather than just trying to dose the right amount, because that can be problematic. So that's it for histamine intolerance for me. I hope that sort of made it better. You do get the hang of it as time goes, so don't give up. You will notice what triggers you. After a while, you will see what triggers you. Tomatoes are a biggie. In our house, I know that for sure. When we have tomatoes for a couple of days, we get sneezy, itchy, all those sorts of things. So there is an app too. I forgot to mention that. There's an app that you can buy. It's the best $10 you'll ever spend. It's called Food Intolerances. It's got a blue background with a red strawberry in the middle. You can actually go in and say histamine issues, gluten issues, dairy issues, and it will cut everything out for you. It will have green as foods you can eat, red as foods you should avoid, and yellow as foods that you can have sometimes. So that is worth spending the money. I think that was what saved me from going insane when we first started. And again, remember, it's not a precise science. You'll have to learn it as you go. Just stick with one thing, and it will get better as time goes on. If you have any questions, feel free to book in for a free 15-minute. If you know somebody who suffers from histamine, please share this with them, because it is quite a complex subject, and it is something that most people don't really know about it until it's a problem for them. So I'll talk to you soon, and I look forward to catching up with you. Bye-bye.